Hi, everybody. Welcome to Cause for Concern. I'm Steve Hegarty. That is Garen Allen. This is the pilot episode of a new podcast. G, how you doing, my friend?
Steve, I am good to go, man. Steve, are you listening? Guys out there, are you listening? Because there's a lot we have to say and only so much time to say it.
That's right. So, what is this show? What's it all about? And why should you spend your time listening to two well-manicured media pretty boy types talking about the news? I'll stop you right there. This is not the news, but I am pretty. This is a new show, Cause for Concern. There's a lot of things going on in the world, and we need to talk about it. It's not a new show. It's about you guys. You're going to be involved in this show. Okay. So, where did it come from? Two friends who've known each other for the better part of 20 years, diametrically opposed on a lot of things, similar on a lot of others. We're going to find out which is which. We'll have a few heated arguments, I'm sure, at some point, but we can all agree there's some problems going on with the country. Okay. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We're going to talk about politics and poverty and education and mental health. G would like to talk about why we need another Fast and Furious movie. I don't think we do. We just need The Rock driving around in a car for 2 hours saying funny shit. Same thing. We all know, we all have concerns. We all have beliefs. We all know that Star Wars is really the only franchise that should be out there, provided Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are the ones that are leading it. But look, all honesty and all kidding aside, we have concerns, things we're going to talk about. We're going to bring things to the forefront that are important to us. And we want to hear from you guys, the viewer. We want you to be part of the show. We do our due diligence. We want you guys to do the same. Your cause for concern at gmail.com. I'm going to go back the other way. Your cause for concern at gmail.com, because invariably I always point in the wrong direction. Send us your emails, send us your facts, send us your causes, because we're going to support causes as well. We're going to do some good for some people. Our big goal, and we all know in this world right now, there is a lack of discourse. We got to talk about some things, folks. Doesn't matter if you're on the right, you're on the left. If you're on the right, doesn't mean you're a Nazi. If you're on the left, you're not some hippie tree hugger who hates jobs and wants every car to be electric. We'll talk about that in another episode too. The point is, we're going to talk. G, where did the show come from? Tell the folks.
Thanks for asking, Steve. Pretty amazing. It's been a long and drawn out process, but it goes back to many of me and you, our late night conversations. Yes, and sometimes arguments. I know I won most of the arguments, but who's counting? But those arguments and those conversations are well needed right now. Maybe even farther back for me personally, my time spent over in Europe talking to a lot of people over there along my travels, and the excitement and the general interest in people and what they thought and what they believed. And I think that's a big part of the show. And I'm hoping it's a big part of the show for people out there too, because we need more of that. We definitely need more of that. But this show really is rooted in a couple events, maybe two events. One was the 2016 election. 2016, I watched an absolute horror. And as I realized late into the night, as the elections were being counted, that Donald Trump may win. And I think I knew deep down in my heart he was going to win. And there was absolute horror. But the next morning I rolled over, looked at my girlfriend, Laura, and Donald Trump had won. And I grabbed my cell phone and I played It's the End of the World by REM. And how right I was. It was just this moment of truth. And wow. But there was another event. And this is the one where me and you and our friend Sean Doherty, came in and said, this has got to happen. It was 2020. And this idea that Donald Trump may win again, another 4 years of deterioration of this country, of denigration of our society, of our greatest institutions. And, that was an awkward moment. And I think when I realized that, I think I texted you, I texted Sean, and I said, listen, man, if Donald Trump wins another 4 years, this country is screwed. It's done. Democracy will not exist. And he didn't win the election. He did not win the election. But here it is, man. The country is still in turmoil. It's going to shit. Donald Trump's not here, but the Republican Party is. And we're still doing this show because it's needed, because we have to. I don't know, man. I can't tell you any more than that, but I think that's the gist of where we're at, me and you as friends. And I hope some of you guys out there
Yeah, absolutely. We were all concerned with the way the country is going. Our citizenry is pushed to the brink. Our government checks and balances aren't being utilized. Our economy is in trouble. The democratic republic, our democracy, is in some deep shit, and we want to have some discussions about it. We're not going to yell and scream all the time, sometimes. And I
Yeah.
would argue
Well,
right now that I don't think you won all or most of those arguments, but I digress. We'll come back to that. But we have to be able to have empathy with other people. And for you listeners and people watching, we're not bashing the right, we're not bashing the left, we're bashing everybody. We have to look at things from all sides. Now, do certain people have more culpability than others under certain circumstances? Absolutely. We just want to put a less myopic view on these things and have some discussion. You have to be able to look at the other side of an argument and kind of empathize with what that person is going through. And like we've said, that we don't care if you're black, white, gay, straight, Jewish, Gentile, Jedi, Star Wars fan, absolutely. Star Trek fan, no, I kid. We all want to be inclusive. Everyone should have a voice, and we want people to have that voice. It's gone too far right or too far left. We have to have some things in moderation, all things in moderation, right? 2 drinks a day, okay. 3 drinks a day, not so much. Cheeseburgers every single night of the week, not good for you, right? Sugar all day long, you get the diabetes. Moderation and discussion. That's what cause for concern is about, helping people do some good for the world, trying to make a difference. You'll have some laughs, you'll learn something. G and I have been doing these discussions, like he said, and like I've said, for over 20 years. We talked to our friend Doherty, we talked to our other friends. Sometimes we're like, holy shit, I can't believe you just said that. Or like, oh my God, you must be totally insane. Or that is the smartest thing I've ever heard. This is what we're going to do.
Hey,
Okay?
I got to give a shout out, Steve. I got to give a
Yeah.
shout out to my boys and girls, women, ladies, friends over at Coffee Rush in Gilbert, Arizona. And the reason I'm bringing that up, guys, is specifically for this. This is not a marketing ploy. These are friends, people I've known for almost a decade, stopping into the coffee shop and talking to these guys. And they've been usually supportive of us talking about this show, giving me ideas, giving us ideas, and doing exactly what we're talking about, Steve. And again, it's not a plug for Coffee Rush, but I thought it's important because you guys out there, you could do the same thing. Talk to people. You find out the strangest things, the coolest things about people. You learn about people. And I just thought I'd mention that, man, because that sort of falls in line, right, with what we're doing.
It absolutely does. And we're going to be doing a live show at some point from that place.
I hope.
Absolutely, guys. Go into the Coffee Bean, support them, support your local businesses.
Hey,
and when you go
Coffee
into a
Rush.
coffee shop, talk
Coffee Rush.
I apologize. Coffee Rush. Talk to someone you might not talk to normally. Strike up a conversation. You never know what you're going to learn. All right. Let's talk about the first episode. We weren't given much choice. We looked at a lot of things, and this show has grown organically over the last 6 months as we're trying to gear up and do this. We've shot a bunch of practice ones and pilot ones and segments and stuff. We got to talk about the current state of our republic, and we're going to compare it to the Roman Empire, because you looking at those two, it's probably the most closely related ones that we could look at. I mentioned the citizenry is pushed to the brink. Our economy is in trouble. Inflation is up. Discourse is gone. Congress, Senate, nothing getting done. And we're the ones that get the short end of the stick. And everyone wants to yap, yap, yap and use rhetoric and bullshit. And the media seems to separate everybody. Instead of informing people, they use a narrative. And we have zero narrative to push here. All we want to do is talk about stuff. You might agree, you might disagree. We want to hear from you. Okay. Your cause for concern at gmail.com. When we come back from the break, nice, G, I like that, good back and forth. When we come back from the break, we're going to get into it. Stick around. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, we are back from the break. Like we were saying before we went into break, we didn't really have much of a choice. At least we didn't feel we did for the pilot episode. We got to talk about the state of the Republic. We're going to compare it to ancient Rome. It's been done a lot in different venues for different reasons, but looking at those timelines, I think it's very important. We are equivalent to the Roman Empire as far as accomplishments and our size and things like that. We're going to talk about some of those things. It's summer, right? Summer's almost over. Anyway, those summer blockbusters, I want you to picture yourself in the movie theater. Goes dark, screen starts to come up, and you hear that voice. Imagine a world where political norms have broken down. Senators and congressmen use obstructionary means to get nothing done. And here comes our hero, the autocrat. Dun, dun, dun. And everybody cheers. Yay. Right? It's funny and it's a joke, but it's not really funny. And we all know it's not a joke. This is what's going on. And scarily enough, a lot of people are getting on board with this. We cannot be an autocracy. Can't have it. We're going to talk about some things that lead us down this road or have already led us down this road in comparison. Before, as we're talking about this, we say the Roman Empire. We're really, as G had pointed out to me in some of our discussions, we're actually talking about the Democratic Republic of Rome, which is about a just under 475 year span during the Roman Empire, which was almost 2,000 years in existence. We're comparing that to us now. We're roughly halfway there, timeline wise. So it's important for us to look at this. But during the time where it was highly functioning and things were going on, the Senate worked well. It would amend itself and make changes to societal things that would come up or issues that would come up. And it was very effective. It got to the point, though, where things started to shift. Started to be internal strife. I mean, at the time, there wasn't capital punishment. It wasn't part of their norms. There wasn't violence, political violence, or things like that. But as it started to shift, all that started to change. Corruption became worse, overtaxing of the people, all kinds of stuff. And one of the big ones, it was like the first political murder in ancient Rome. And we've seen political murders in the newspapers and on the news and things like that. And they're committing political suicide and all that kind of stuff. This was actually a literal murder. So we figured we spice it up in the beginning. Tiberius Gracchus was a senator. And he was going for a second tour as tribune to the plebes, which were the common people. And he wanted to redistribute redistribute land to the poor. Well, the opponents didn't care for that much, and they bludgeoned him to death with a chair in the Senate. I'm not saying we should bring that kind of stuff back, but we should at least discuss it. And then 300 of his supporters were slain as well. Okay. And then it kind of starts to go down that road. G, take us through what's next, my friend.
Yeah, that's a crazy story, man.
Right?
Bludgeoning to death with a chair. It's pretty extreme. When we talk about political violence, and maybe that's a great example, because I don't think anything else could speak to that. But listen, this picture is obviously the Roman Colosseum. And it's incredible. I stood there. I took this picture and many others, and but as I was standing there, I was realizing a couple of things. One, that it stands as a reminder of the most ambitious architectural, economic accomplishment in history. Really, I mean, it's incredible. But I also sort of sat there and thought about the great or the maybe deviant politicians and all the Roman citizens, both the poor, the well-off citizens, sitting in this Colosseum and gathering in this basic house, this museum, as everything was going on in Rome. So just to clarify something about society, the problems and concerns that appear in society rely on society to fix. And that is not just the politicians. That's the people that elect the politicians to power. These powerful offices of influence. Our democratic republic, and their democratic republic to a certain extent was built on a system of checks and balances. Yep. A protection of ideas, and the right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. And further, those ideas are contingent upon the ability of both society and the politicians to have compassion, understanding, and negotiate the future together, to negotiate it. But let's not forget, the engine that drives negotiation is concession. It's conceding some points that maybe you don't agree with. And sadly, very dangerous right now and sad is we're in a de facto state spiraling downwards into descent. And I thought really this was fitting. The great politician, historian, poet, journalist, you name it, this guy has done it. His name is Orson F. Whitney.
Yep.
He wrote these words: What is history said of eminence without honor? Wealth without wisdom, power and passion without principle? The answer is reiterated in the overthrow of the mightiest empires of ancient times: Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome, and maybe the United States at this point. The four successive universal powers, maybe five, of the past and the present. What and where are they? Steve,
Right. I mean,
where are they and where are we going?
right, absolutely. And and especially I love the point you made about concession. There's no concession these days. No one's willing to cross the aisle to concede any points to get anything done. To your question about those great empires, right? Babylon and Persia have been broken up, obviously, in one way or another for a couple thousand years, but they're still in a de facto war within and amongst themselves, all across the Middle East. Greece, we saw burn basically their financial crisis, austerity measures. It was awful. They're still in trouble. And Rome, obviously, the empire eventually collapsed under its own weight for a multitude of reasons. And we know that these great powers can't outrun time. And we have to look at where we are on that timeline. You know, it's would I use the word frightening? Is that an accurate word to as far as where we are in comparison, G?
Yeah, Steve, 100%. I think frightening, horror is the word that comes to mind, man. It's just horror and horrible. First, let's restate what you said, man. And I think it's important what we said and we talked about it. We still have to clarify this because I think it's easy to get lost in between this 2,000-year empire.
Yep.
We are talking about Rome collapsing as a global game changer, and the Democratic Republic lasted, as you mentioned, 478 years. We're halfway there right now. It should also be noted that even the Roman Democratic Republic was in a quasi state of war throughout its history and political upheaval for long periods of time, just to keep it in match with the United States. And I think that's important to look at too, because that's another one of those interesting points to make in the similarities between these two great powers. Listen, Julius Caesar, the illustrious moment where he crossed the Rubicon and he was appointed dictator for life. His assassination paved the way for a long lineage of emperors. That's what we're talking about. That line of demarcation when he was assassinated, and Augustus Caesar moved forward. His grandnephew moved forward as the starting point for emperors. But before that, there's three real reasons, I think. And really, I want to drill these home. And I think this is what this program was about. Me and you, walked through a lot of different scenarios. This has been 6 months of us changing this show. Really, talking about a lot of different things that we could have talked, and all of them were great, man. I can't remember the last time I laughed so hard when we were talking about, Jesus, this guy named Caligula, he had a talking horse, and a talking horse named Echidnas. Actually, he wanted to put him on the council. He wanted to make him council. The similarities. Donald Trump had this pet turtle, and he named the turtle McConnell, Mitch McConnell, and he could talk as well. I mean, it's incredible. He could talk, and slow and easy wins the race. But hey, listen.
And some would say Pelosi is a talking ass. It goes both ways.
Well, many have made that argument, and I won't disagree or agree with you. I've got to keep somewhere in the middle, right? So, three reasons to focus on why the Republic fell. Number one is corruption and dysfunction of the Senate. It's well publicized. You mentioned it. It's 100% accurate. This is going to be a lot of time I think we're going to spend maybe talking about some facts, some numbers, some data.
Yep.
Listen, the crossing of the Rubicon did not help. The civil war that ensued, he marched right with an army over the Rubicon and caused a civil war. And basically confronted the Senate and his old friend Pompey. Listen, man, that was a terrible moment. It was crazy that happened. And something similar happened here. We'll get into that. Listen, the last part, and this is where we're at, and this is why I think it's a big marker on society. And like you said, this watershed moment has taught us a lot about where we're at. There was a time when the Civil War ensued, there was a willingness and an apathy by the Roman citizens. And they found autocracy to be palatable due to the senatorial corruption and the dysfunction and even the non-function. And that's where I think it speaks volumes where we're at on the timeline, Steve. And why don't you, reiterate those points, man? Maybe just to make them clear for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. I mean, corruption, for one, the Senate has been at a standstill. Nothing gets done. We're going to talk about some corruption, and there's all different kinds. There's endemic, systemic, and we're kind of in systemic, almost legal corruption. Some of the things we're going to mention, we got some numbers. Yeah, the Rubicon moment. Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, went into Rome. Our Rubicon moment was January 6th. And whether you're on the right or the left and you want to call it a peaceful protest, which you absolutely can't because that's crap, an insurrection, a riot, a protest, whatever, it was a shocking time for this country. Absolutely. And then the apathy of the citizenry. People are so checked out. Nobody gives a crap anymore about some of this stuff. I mean, the government, the DOD came out and said UFOs are real. And nobody blinked an eye. Nobody gave a crap. But the Kardashians, the most vapid, useless people on the planet, were going off the air after 20 years and got like 350 million views or something stupid. That's where we're at. People are inundated with all this yap, 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 and the rhetoric from both sides and the media and everything. And they're checked out. So they're looking for that autocrat moment. Everybody wants that big, strong leader who can go in there and crack the whip. And that's one of the reasons why President Trump was elected the first time. People didn't want the run-of-the-mill regular Hillary Clinton type, and that was a terrible candidate for them to put up. Anyway, let's tell the truth, Democratic Party, right? You guys are terrible at message. Republicans are good at message, and it comes back to haunt you guys over and over. We'll talk about some of that a little further down. But yeah, and this is where we're at. We focused on those three big things. And as G had said, we talked about a lot of stuff like disease, right? Plagues running through the Roman Empire. Sound familiar? We got something going on right now. Overextended military, taxing, breakdown of the middle class, all these things. But we focused on these three big ones because those were kind of the turning points that let the other stuff happen. So when we come back, we're going to crank it up and we're going to start breaking this stuff down. We'll see you in a minute. All right, everybody, welcome back from the break. I think we've laid out a pretty compelling picture of what we're going to talk about and what is leading to the fall of not only Rome, but potentially our republic, like the Roman Democratic Republic. There was a lot of great achievements, right, G, that Rome went through?
Sure, there was a lot of great achievements that Rome went through. I mean, Rome essentially, put us on the map as far as roads, aqueducts, running water, and all the things that they really produced. And I know we went through a ton of. There's just too many to even mention. And a lot of those happened during the imperial time. I hate to say this because it was the empire that produced some of these great things. Those great things that they produced, though, we could talk about them. We could talk about empires, but that's for a later topic. That's for a later discussion. We can surely say, though, freedom itself is analogous to democracy as oppression is to imperialism. However, it does not change the accomplishments or the power of that great nation.
No, absolutely. Like you said, aqueducts, roads, tax system, whether that's good or bad, we don't know. Newspapers, all kinds of stuff that Rome had done during the empire. And I mean, same thing can be said for China with all the accomplishments that they made, but that was through a different system, let's say. Again, another episode. But let's get back to the glaring reason for the overthrow of the Democratic Republic, and that was senatorial or Senate dysfunction. Just like our modern day Senate, right? We all know we're in a gridlock. They're trying to pass these giant omnibus bills. They're doing all this stuff. It's just not functioning the way our forefathers had set it up based on the Democratic Republic of Rome. I want to read a quote, though. Much like our modern day Senate, Julius Caesar had pointed out that the richest members of the community are one and the same. The Senate and the richest members of the community are one and the same. So separating the rich from their tax breaks and their money, not only a war on the elite class, but also a war on the Senate itself, G.
Yeah, no doubt. And this leads into our conversation, man. What a great quote. I mean, there's a lot of quotes by Julius Caesar. We're going to get into some of them after this, and where some of our politicians have received their messaging is not where you think it is. It's not from great United States leaders. there is a long history tradition that has been passed down of this rhetoric, man. Julius Caesar was a brilliant orator. He really was, man.
Yeah.
But back to the filibuster. You mentioned the filibuster. Listen, the filibuster, as we talk about, as we hear it on the news, and for those of you who don't know, it is a measure in which the minority has the ability to, and they used to have to speak on the floor until 61 votes were received in order to put cloture and stop the discussion and go to a vote. And then the majority would have their vote. Right now, for instance, 51 votes, Kamala Harris would break the tie and that bill would be passed. But Mitch McConnell uses this in a way, and so did the Democrats through time, to gridlock things. But listen, where this came from is important because all of us listening, now we've got what the filibuster is out of the way. Let's talk about where it came from. And contrary to popular belief, CNN, I'm sorry, Chris Cuomo, I'm sorry, buddy. The filibuster was not invented by Jim Crow 2.0. I don't even know that guy. I don't know if anybody knows that guy. Is it used as a racist tool? 100% it is, but it's also used to stop voting. A young man named Cato the Younger, and he was a Roman senator, used to talk from sunup to sundown in order to stop anything from getting done in the Senate. And specifically taxes was one of the first times he used this. And he was a noble man. He was a good person who was trying to fight for the normal guy, the people who weren't well off in Rome. And he would use this tactic to stop it. But like we've talked about, the filibuster is a tool, and you could take this tool, like a shovel. I can use it to dig a flower bed, or I can use it to dig your grave. It can be used for both. I can use it to rhetorically beat you over the head ad baculum, as the Romans would say, to beat my point across, or I can use it to beat your skull in, as some of the criminals would do. But that's, I digress. I know it's funny, but it's the same stuff. That shovel is the rhetoric, obviously, both literally and figuratively. In Roman times, my point would be that it was used as an extension and a vehicle to get to goals. Yes, okay. So, meaning the opposition would stop things. In the Obama administration and in the Trump administration, it's 12 years, there were 600 instances of the filibuster being used. That's more than the total time it's been used in the existence of our democratic republic. And maybe that was more than the actual Roman republic it was used. So Steve, this is an issue. This is a large issue that we're talking about. And I know that we're going to get to all this. So, your thoughts.
Well, yeah, and it is. And we've had discussions, and you think they should get rid of the filibuster. I think, and most people too might not realize that it's not even in the Constitution. It wasn't written into the Constitution. It's not part of senatorial procedure. It's kind of just an adopted thing that, as we said, has been around since Cato the Younger, a descendant of Julius Caesar, by the way. But I personally think it should be used. And for them, and one of the things that I have a problem with is that they don't even do it. They threaten it. Oh, I'm going to filibuster, and everyone wimps out and they don't get anything done, right? The vote just never happens. I think if you're going to do it, you take the floor. You don't yield the floor unless you're answering a question, because you are allowed to yield the floor to answer a question, or to receive a question and then answer it, obviously. But you can't be up there reading the rules of cards or recipe books or, Lord of the Rings. Well, okay, that would be okay. You can read Lord of the Rings. But if you're going to get up there and you're going to whine or whatever, then you don't get to use it. If you're going to filibuster, get your ass on the floor, talk about the problem, offer solutions, talk about potential concession. We've mentioned that word a couple of times already, and use it the right way. Because the way they're doing it now, it just doesn't, they, like you say, it's a shovel, it's a cudgel. They bash you over the head. Oh, I'm going to filibuster, and nothing gets done. And that leads to nothing happening. That leads to the senatorial dysfunction. And now all these other things, all those dominoes start to fall, and it leads to problems.
Yeah. And just to get a little further into this corruption, Stephen, and this is crazy when we think about the numbers. $3.2 billion in lobbying money. $3.2 billion in lobbying money. That's the reported number that is flowing through Congress annually.
And what's congressional budget?
Congressional budget is $2 billion, and that's broken down, I think, into 800 million, I think, for the Senate, and for the House, I think it's 1.18.
Yeah, 860 for the Senate, $860 million, 1.18 billion for the House.
That's a stark discrepancy, and that money isn't all used. I think it's confusing because people would think, well, it's used to pass their agenda, but it's also used to stop their agenda. And this is where I think it gets interesting, Steve, is, people look at lobbying money in Congress and they say, well, they're passing their bills. They're doing the exact opposite as well.
Right.
They're using the filibuster and supporting, and Congress knows who these people are and their special interest groups, and they're using it the exact opposite way to say, you know what? We're going to stop any change to gun rights, any change to abortion, any change to the financial institution. That's the crazy part about it. I know you've got some more. We've discussed a lot of this. And
we did. And one other thing too, right? You had mentioned $3.2 billion is the lobbying expenditure, right? Special interest groups that they report. You got to assume that it's got to be double, if not more. That goes unreported or used in different ways that, don't get reported. So now we're talking 3-to-1 spending almost. And one other thing too, right? Labor groups representing the taxpayer. I'm reading this so I get it right. And consumers spend $1 to $34 spent by businesses. That's insane. Okay. They're outspending us unbelievably so. So of course, the middleman, the common guy, the middle class, lower class are getting the shaft.
And it's equal opportunity, Steve. This is Republicans and Democrats, correct?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's on both sides. This is that legal corruption. It's unbelievable. And their corruption's been around since Uckluck smashed Muckluck's head in and stole his dinosaur eggs, whatever. And when there's been organized groups of people, and it continues on. Now this stuff is legal and nobody bats an eye because they're so used to it. And it goes to our point about apathy, and something we're going to talk a little bit later. One other thing, right? A recent study found that on average, for every dollar spent on influencing politics, the nation's most politically active corporations received $760 from the government. What's that, like 76,000% return? You put money into the stock market,
yeah.
Right, you get 10%, you're like, yay, 76,000%. Wow. That's just insane, right? Now, the three biggest, our biggest spenders, you might be surprised to hear this one. National Association of Realtors, $84 million. U.S. Chamber of Commerce, $81.9 million. And then Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers, this one came in a little low at 25 mil as far as being reported. Pretty significant amounts of money used just for lobbying. And we all know, nobody trusts big pharma for all the stuff they do. Real estate, the market is insane. It's up and down. These people are pumping a lot of money into this kind of thing. And like you said, G, they're using they're using their lobbying to get them to trigger a filibuster. So things either don't get passed, or things that are beneficial to them, the businesses, get passed. And we're the ones that get left out in the cold.
Steve, research, and maybe this is something for you guys out in the audience to look at, because Steve, something occurred to me as you were saying, you were surprised by some of these top tier groups. I would have expected the NRA to be high on this list in finances being put out there. Now, here's the thing. It makes sense because the NRA has been under a lot of scrutiny. They are a decreasing powerful organization. They're falling apart. Now, it's interesting because I would think Big Pharma as well, low on the list, and Big Pharma under scrutiny, as I think you're going to get to a little bit more, in lawsuits and the way we view their assault on the health of America. I think it's interesting to look at, maybe this is a shift in lobbying money as some of these groups fall by the wayside, possibly. And it'll be interesting. You guys,
sure, it could.
Please email us.
Absolutely. That could very well be the case. And yeah, the NRA has been in trouble for the last couple of years. They'd filed bankruptcy. They had their whole TV wing and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy what's going on, and we will definitely get some more numbers and put some of that stuff up. And like there was Matt Gates. Okay, you're all familiar with him. We have a couple clips that we're putting up on Instagram from our other shows that we'll have out there. You'll see one. But I watched the documentary The Swamp a couple years back, and it was interesting. But in the beginning of the movie, they give him a card and says some company or some group wants to pay him $50,000 to have lunch. It's insane. Like, and he even said, like, I'm not worth $50,000. Why would I, go to lunch with these people?
Right.
But that's what they do. They have a fundraiser, and they can either buy you a $25 steak dinner or give you a $25,000 honorarium or whatever they call it that goes to your campaign. The amount of money that politicians have to raise just to give to their party, be it Republican or the Democratic Party, they have to pay them like $125,000 a year. And that's for like one of the low end, like Matt Gates or something like that. That seems like corruptible offenses right there in and of itself. But it's just, it's unfathomable to me. As the more we look into this show and more do the research, you're like, geez, like some of it's incredibly crazy.
It's mobster stuff, because I can't really hand you $100,000, but he might appear on your doorstep.
Right. I'm going to talk to the guy. He's going to drop you an envelope. It's true. You're absolutely right. It's unbelievable. You had mentioned too, a couple of things we were talking about was Citibank during the 2008 crisis and some of this other stuff. One thing I came up with, right? Look at the 2014 omnibus bill. Okay. The budget deal. And again, omnibus bill, a massively huge, convoluted, overinflated, overbloated bill. Bills need to be clean, one or two things on it, get them done. No chance for filibuster or very little. Things would actually work, right? Congress used the deal to secretly put taxpayers back on the hook for the bank bailouts, right? Our representatives repealed the law that prevented us from bailing out the banks, but we ate that one and paid them back. New York Times report, on that same one, they reported that 70 of the 85 lines in the language that killed the derivatives bill came from a piece of model legislation drafted by Citibank lobbyists. Oh, shocking. The lobbyists wrote a bill or deleted lines in a bill that was beneficial to them.
Steve, I got to stop you there, man. I think we need to do this. Listen, you guys out there, this is a line from a movie. Please email us and tell us where it came from. What if you went to law school and I went to prison and we were both surrounded by criminals?
Right. And guys, send us your facts. Here's the email address, yourcauseforconcern@gmail.com. Send us your facts. Show us some of this stuff. We'll talk about it on the air. We'll visit this stuff again. We're going to call out your name. We're going to say, this is an email from so-and-so. We're going to read your facts and we'll be like, holy crap, this stuff is going on everywhere. And don't forget too, folks, it's not just your federal government. It's your state, it's your local, it's your school board. All this stuff goes on. Don't ignore it. Don't be apathetic. Listen up, follow up, send us emails. We're going to be part of it. You had mentioned too, the one thing about the legal and criminal stuff. Other thing I found, right? We mentioned the big spenders, and that was from opensecrets.org, which is a good website. You can find some good information on there. But 10 years ago now, but still, in 2011, things haven't got any better. Johnson & Johnson agreed to pay $70 million in civil and criminal fines to settle a Justice Department complaint brought under by the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the FCPA. SEC had charged Johnson & Johnson and its subsidiaries with bribing government doctors in Greece who used Johnson & Johnson surgical implants, hospital administrators in Poland in return for contracts, and Romanian public doctors to prescribe Johnson & Johnson pharmaceutical products. Their subsidiaries also paid kickbacks to Iraq to obtain 19 contracts under the United Nations Oil for Food program. Good God, this stuff, and it's rampant. This is just a couple of examples. This is the stuff that has been found out. Imagine the crap that never comes to light.
You're talking about globalization too, and man, I'm glad you mentioned this. And this is for another time, obviously, guys. It's one of my favorite topics, and I know Steve has heard this ad nauseum from me over the recent years that I've been talking about asymmetric hybrid warfare. And people usually tune me out when I talk about that, but it's starting to reach the news now. And we've got a few friends that are hopefully going to be showing up on on air, and we're going to interview these people. They're top subject matter experts in asymmetric hybrid warfare, but the effects of globalization. And we're not in the bubble anymore, man. You talk about Johnson and Johnson and this company, that all these things not only affect the United States and how we do business and the morality, but they affect how we're viewed globally and affect the shift, it's tectonic plates, if you will, that shift this world and how other countries' economy, their finances are tied to us. And this is an incredible thing, because I know a lot of you out there, I used to live in Vermont and New Hampshire, and I wish I could live in that world again where hey, Bob, how you doing? How's your daughter? Does your son need a ride to school? Hey, I'll leave the key for you underneath the mat. But that's not the world we live in. And it hasn't been that since World War II. We're a global economy. We're a global influence. And again, I say this because when Rome fell, had stark implications on the globe after their fall of democracy. I say that because why? Our democracy is a beacon of hope for the rest of the world and the rest of the democratic countries out there that believe in freedom and fight against oppression. It's important to remember that we don't just affect the United States. So when people say America first and make America great again and all that great stuff that people should believe in, but should clarify what that means, because we affect everything around us at this point, and it's dangerous, the game that we're playing. And
yeah, absolutely.
We'll get to it after the break, Steve, because I know we're on a hard out, but maybe it should scare some people, because we're headed for that Julius Caesar moment. And guess what? After the break, we're going to talk about a guy, an incredible general, politician, orator that rode his army into Rome and started a civil war, and the other guy who tried to ride his army into the Capitol.
See you after the break.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning back in. It's been a great show already. We hope you got a lot of useful information out of this, and we hope we started the wheel spinning up there. We hope you guys are thinking about what's happening in this country right now, because it is deadly serious right now. It is. But this is where I tell all of you out there that there is a cliffhanger. Yes, first episode of Cause for Concern, and we're leaving you guys hanging. That's right. Because 2,000 years worth of Roman history was impossible to put on the air in just 40 minutes. Yeah. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to split it up. The next segment of episode 1, Cause for Concern, the fall of Rome, possible fall of the United States, will air in 2 weeks. And guess what? Some of you out there think you know how this is going to end. And maybe you're right. Julius Caesar crosses the Rubicon. Civil war ensues. The United States, January 6th. Oh, wait, we don't know how that's going to end right now. And I guess the other big mystery is, where's Steve? I think he's starting to write the next episode, episode 2. We'll tell you more about that next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Cause for Concern. Are you guys out there listening?